Hi everyone, Nathan here with ATC Cooling and Heating in Kingsport, Tennessee. Today we're going to do a comparison of 4 Ruud heat pumps. Now Rheem is an Atlanta, Georgia based HVAC manufacturer and they have offices around the world. Rheem markets its products under the Rheem and Ruud brand names. The models, though, are identical. For residential applications, Rheem, Ruud make furnaces, air conditioners, heat pumps, water heaters, and other HVAC equipment. The heat pumps in our comparison today are first the RP14AY. This is a 14 SEER basic heat pump. Next is the RP15AY. Looks exactly like the 14 except that it's a 15 SEER model. And both of these units are the standard cube form and they look like this. Next is the RD16AY. This is different. It is a side discharge model. Instead of mounting the fan on top, it gets mounted along the side. And it is a higher efficiency model than the 14 and the 15. And lastly, we have the RD18AY, which is a true variable output side discharge unit. The interesting thing about the Rheem Ruud heat pumps is that they are all multi-stage models. The basic RP14 and RP15 models are 2-stage units, as is the RD16. This means that these units can operate at about 60% and at about 100% of capacity. In fact, they will switch back and forth between these two outputs as conditions warrant. Here's a chart showing that in action. These units can work at 100%, at about 60%, and of course they can also simply be off. Early on in the morning, you may not need any cooling at all. It may be a little later in the day, and the unit will run for a little while, and it will only run at first stage early in the morning, and it'll duty cycle there a couple times, let's say, until it gets a little warmer in the day, and it says, you know what, we need a little more capacity, and it might run at 100% there. It might duty cycle a couple times at 100%. It might run for a good block in the afternoon, again at 100%, and then later in the day as things cool back off, it might go back to that 60% application and duty cycle at that point. Now the RD18, it's different, and it's a true variable output model, which means it can modulate its output anywhere from 45% to 100% of capacity and any place in between. This gives it real flexibility in matching its output to the demands of your house and the outdoor temperature at any given point. So looking back at our chart, it can run anywhere from 45% to 100%. So it might not run at all at 6 a.m., but then it might start running here, and what it's going to try and do is always be running. It's going to match these other ones as they need, and then later in the day it might come down and then duty cycle late in the day. But again, it's trying to run most of the time, constantly putting heat or cooling, this one being cooling, into your house across the day. Now, this sort of operation, it pays dividends not just in this operational mode here, but in real efficiency too. And I'll give you an example of that as well. The efficiencies of the different units play out like this. The RP14, we're going to look at SEER, which is the cooling efficiency, and HSPF, which is heating efficiency. The RP14 gets 14.3 SEER and 7.5 HSPF. The RP15 is a little bit better. It gets you 15.2 SEER and 7.8 HSPF. The RD16, the first of the 2 side discharge models, does better still. Depending on the size, the tonnage, it's 16 to 17 on the SEER and 8.1 to 8.5 on HSPF. And the RD18 is really quite fabulous at 18 to 19 SEER and 8.5 to 10.0 HSPF. Another benefit of 2-stage operation is quietness. When operating on low stage, all of these units are quieter. And the RD18 is in a different league still. Its noise level is that of about a kitchen refrigerator. Very quiet indeed. The next benefit of 2-stage operation is humidity mitigation. Removing humidity in the summertime is all about runtime. The longer the unit runs, the more humidity it'll get. And when you have a lower stage to use in more moderate weather, your unit can just run longer. It doesn't duty cycle as often. Running longer is better for temperature distribution too, as the unit is more evenly putting air, warm conditioned air in the wintertime and cool air in the summertime into your house. And you'll have an more even temperature across the house because of that. Another feature that separates these heat pumps from one another is their cold weather performance. The RP14 and RP15 models have typical heat pump performance when the mercury dips. At 5 degrees Fahrenheit, these units make about 48 to 52% of their rated heat outputs. Now, rated output is done at 47 degrees, but as the temperature falls, heat pumps work harder to extract the heat from the outdoor air and then move that heat into your house. Their heat outputs fall, as do their efficiencies, as the temperature goes down. So this 45 to 50% or so output, that's historically as good as it got. Here are a couple charts showing you exactly what their heat outputs are at that 5-degree level. Now, while the RD16 model is indeed better than the two legacy 14 and 15 SEER models, it's not a lot better. Mostly, its heat output at 5 degrees versus rated output is in the upper 50% area. Here's a chart showing exactly what that looks like. Now lastly, the RD18 does a lot better, but with a caveat. So here's the chart for the 18. Depending on the size, the RD18 makes about 80% or even 90% of its rated output at 5 degrees. But the rated outputs are lower too. You would expect that the 3-ton model would make around 35,000 BTUs or so, but the RD18 is only rated at 31,800 BTUs. Likewise, the 4-ton model should make nearly 48,000 BTUs, but it's only rated at 41,500 BTUs. Now this is okay, so long as your HVAC company knows to look for this and sizes your equipment accordingly. As with all modern equipment, you cannot just go by the size of the last unit installed. 3 tons from yesteryear is likely not the same as a 3-ton model from a modern unit. So if your HVAC company gets this wrong, you may end up with an undersized unit, which will be uncomfortable in the summer as it won't be able to cool your house to 72 or maybe even 74 degrees, and will unnecessarily engage your emergency heat in the winter. And that just increases your electric bill rather considerably. So what does all of this mean? Well, let me show you on a chart. On our chart here, we've got BTU, or the output of the unit, and the demand of the house we'll have on this side. And on the bottom, we have temperature from 0 degrees on up to about 50 degrees, the areas that you need heat in your house. So let's look at a RD18 model, for example. Now that model is rated at 47 degrees like all models are, and it has a fairly soft curve here, and it does fall off as the temperature gets lower. But again, it's 80 or 90% at this 5-degree level here. 100% up here at 47 degrees, right? So as it gets colder outside, every heat pump, including the RD18, has a harder time pulling heat out of the air, and so its output falls. The problem with that, though, is that when it gets colder outside, your house needs more heat, right? It's colder, you need more heat in the house, and that's a different line. And that line might look like this. You need very little heat at 50 degrees, right? But it goes up and up and up as the temperature gets lower, and you end up with this point where the heat pump is not making enough heat for the house. Now, every heat pump has a backup. It's typically electric emergency heat, although it could be a gas furnace. When this point is crossed, you've got to make up that heat with the backup. If it's electric emergency, it's quite costly to run, and it's running here, right? But not as much, because maybe your temperature in your area doesn't often fall to 5 degrees. On the other hand, if you had, for example, not the RD18, this is the RD18, but you have the 14 SEER model, well, it might also start up here at 47 degrees, but it falls off much more quickly. And that just means you have considerably more need for that backup electric heat, and that can be very costly to run. Alright, as you look through the Ruud lineup, the 4 models that we're looking at today, and consider the cost of their products, because that certainly matters, I think there are 2 individual standout models. First, the basic 14 SEER unit. The RP14 has a lot to recommend it. It's a really well-priced unit, and it's the only model in its class that I'm aware of that features two-stage operation. If you're looking for a basic unit, the Ruud RP14AY is a great choice. The RP15 model, well, it's almost identical to the 14, but it costs a lot more, and in my opinion, it's just not worth the extra bucks. The other sweet spot is at the top end of our comparison. The RD18 is a really compelling unit with good performance. Just be careful to select the correct size for your house. For a variable output unit, too, it is a really well-priced model. I should point out that Ruud also makes an even more premium model, the RP19AY, and it's a standard heat pump configuration, the cube. But these models, they're not any more efficient than the RD18, but they're considerably more pricey. So, again, for my money, I would choose the RD18 if your budget allows that. Now, if you have any questions on Ruud heat pumps or really anything HVAC, connect with us on our website at atcservice.com or just leave us a message here. Thanks for watching and stay warm out there.